we're going to get cranked up here for the final segment. I think tonight and then Monday night, a week from tonight, you're going to have to bear with me a little bit because we'll be covering some more technical subjects. We're going to do finances. We'll start it tonight, probably finish it early Monday, and then talk about liability for the rest of the evening, and then that'll close the course out. So it's not going to be quite as spiritually exciting as the course has been, but it's important material. We want you to understand it and learn it just so you're aware of some of these issues going forward. So talking about finances, we're just going to try and give you a little bit of overview of some considerations or some issues that you really need to be aware of. And what a church wants to do is it wants to establish a procedure to ensure that, to ensure two things about church funds. The first thing that we want to ensure is that they're being used properly, really to further the mission of the church. That can mean sort of any number of things, but we don't want funds being spent on projects that maybe not, maybe they're good projects but not really helping. We just want to make sure that there's an order and a accountability and a stewardship of these funds. So that's the first thing. Are they really being used to further the mission of the church? And then the second thing is, are they being handled in such a way that the testimony of the church is really maintained? And we've got this famous verse in the Bible that tells us to avoid any appearance of evil. And when you apply that to finances, it's not enough, especially with a nonprofit organization, it's not enough that the money is being used properly. It has to look like it's being used properly, because if it doesn't look that way, then conversation's going to start, and then you have lost that. You're going to lose your testimony, and you'll end up developing an maybe undeserved, but nevertheless a reputation that will damage you. It's really the same situation why I'm not going to ride in the car alone with a woman other than my wife. Even if it's totally innocent and I'm giving someone a ride, it can look bad, so I'm not going to do it, And people even know what looks bad. Like even if they know nothing's happening, but they know you shouldn't be doing it because it looks bad, that can, what are you, stupid? You know that looks bad. Why are you doing that? So that's what we've got to keep ourselves out of. And it's really the same thing with how we handle money. And the things that really get pastors in trouble is relationships with illicit relationships, and then mishandling of funds is really what happens. And then of course a doctrinal change. So we really want to protect the church by really establishing a procedure that really maintains this testimony. And we do this in terms of making sure the money is used for the purposes of the church. We just define a procedure for decision making. And then as far as handling money in such a way to maintain the testimony is, again, we establish procedures or policies with how we conduct business, and specifically how we handle the collection and the disbursement of funds. Okay? So the church just wants to be conducting business in a certain way that looks right. And that can take up, all sorts of forms. We're gonna, but just, when we sign contracts, we got to be careful. My job when I'm signing contracts, I don't view it as to get the absolute best price. That's not number one. It's important. I want to do the best I can to steward the money you give, but I got to be careful. Like when someone calls, I'm just digressing a little bit here, but you know what I'm saying. Someone calls me up and he's going to sell me, I don't know, folding chairs at a certain price. I'm not going to lie to the guy and tell him, well, I got another guy who's going to do it for this. Can you match that price? unless I have that other guy, you know what I'm saying? But that's something that we might do. Oh, I got this other guy who's going to do it for less. And, you know, that would be like a negotiating tactic. I wouldn't use that one. It's just not worth it to me. You know, I got to sleep at night. I got to look people in the eye. I believe that honesty is good business, but there's a way we conduct business, but specifically the way that we collect and disperse funds. Now, in terms of the decision-making process, you know, like how do we ensure that funds are used to further the mission of the church? We do it via a budget, okay? Now, what is a budget? It's simply a schedule or a list of planned income and planned expenditures. You know, this church is a big church. We got, you know, 1,000, 1,500 members. Lots of funds flow through here. We've got a school that generates revenue. We got the learning center that generates revenue. We got the cafe that generates revenue. On and on it goes. We're like running 4 businesses here, plus the church, plus 2. It's just a very big operation. So our budget, you know, for a church is probably complex. You know, and then we got the missions on the other side. We got missions. We have you know, radio. So there's just a lot that goes on here. So we establish a budget, and a budget is nothing more, nothing less than just a list of planned income and expenditures. Generally, you talk about a balanced budget. We want the budget to balance, okay? It doesn't have to. The church could decide it wants to run a surplus some year for a certain reason. You know that we like to have a certain amount of reserve money in the bank just to cover us in case of unexpected. Our reserves might be low, so we might say, hey, this year we're going to run a surplus, you know. Or maybe, you know, we know that offerings are down. We think they're down temporarily. We don't want to have to cut back our expenditures. This year we're going to run a deficit on purpose because that's the conditions of the church. So it's not like the balanced budget is not like the golden calf, you know what I'm saying? But if you run a deficit budget year after year, well, you can't do it indefinitely. So you're going to come to the end of your funds at some point. And if you run a surplus year after year, you're not being a good steward because you're building up money in the bank, and people are not giving money for the church to have a big bank account. People are giving money for, you know, they're tithing out, you know, because before God, but they want to see this money being used, and us as a nonprofit, we got to use money for what it's given for. So there's different things going on there. So we establish this budget. The budget is based on a fiscal year. Okay, a fiscal year is a 12-month period. A lot of smaller organizations will use a calendar year. Their fiscal year will run from January through December. As some of you know, I run a smaller company. Our fiscal year is a calendar year. But the church, because of our size and because accountants tend to be busy on a calendar year, fiscal year, and then also because of our schools running from September through June, it makes sense for us to have a different fiscal year. So you won't be tested on this, but just common knowledge. Our fiscal year runs from August 1st through July 31st. Okay, so that's how Greater Grace does it. So right now, because we're looking forward to the start of the new fiscal year in August, my office is beginning to establish the budget. We got to get it all put together. It's a lot of work. It'll take us 4 to 8 weeks, probably more on the 8 side. We'll put all this stuff together. And we got the whole, we propose a budget, and I've got a big part in that. Just as the controller, as working closely with Pastor Schaller and Pastor Lange. I'll have conversations with Pastor Lange. We'll put it up to the guys above us. Guys, what direction are you taking us? Do you like the direction we're going? Do you like where we're spending the money? Do you want to see more of something? You want to see less of something? This is what we see. We think we could save some here. Is that what you want to do? So we talk this around. We try to get a feel from the leadership where they want to be going. Where are you leading this church? And in some ways we know. We've been hearing this stuff. We know about radio. We're making some changes there. That has some ramifications. We know about this facade we want to put on this building. We're very excited about this. That's not an inexpensive project. How are we going to account for that? How is that going to work? And then we've got different things we're doing. Have you seen some advertising out there for the school? Anybody seen that? You saw it on a bus. I'm very proud of those buses, We got those 4 For GGCA students, we got the whole rainbow there, of kids, So anyway, we're doing these different things, and we work hard on this. So we'll put together a budget. We'll finalize it. We'll package it. We do run a balanced budget. I mean, there's a little bit of, there could be some wrinkles to that, but basically we need to have a balanced budget. We also have, like I said, we have some goals in terms of how much cash we want to have in the bank, and then we have some projects we're saving money for. So all those numbers go into this, spreadsheet formula, and we know what our target is. So we put it all together, we being the finance office, along with the department heads. There's, you and I will be having 18 meetings in coming weeks with all the department heads. We'll sit down with them, and we'll agree with them on what's going to go into their budget, put it all together. And then that budget goes back to the first place it's going to go. We'll probably run it by Pastor Schaller, and then it goes to the Board of Trustees, okay? They're the guys who actually manage the church, as you all know from the bylaws, especially with an emphasis on the legal, financial, physical side. And generally speaking, they will approve that budget, but they have every right and responsibility to ask questions, make changes, propose things. But at some point, they will vote on a budget, and they'll approve it. And then, as you know, the Board of Elders of Greater Grace World Outreach have oversight, but not direct managerial control of the trustees, but they can veto any decision of the trustees, as most of you rightly said on the midterm exam. So the elders, the trustees have approved this budget. Are you going to let that trustee decision stand, or do you want to veto that decision? So all I'm saying is that at the very highest level of the church, the supreme authority of the church, the Board of Elders, has in essence approved that budget. Okay? Everybody get that? It's like very, very important. So the most important decision, how we're going to spend this money, has been made at that very highest level. Nothing's happening in now. It's possible that we could hide some stuff that no one knew about, but as the controller, I can't do anything more than present it to people and say, read it or don't read it, guys. But this is what it is. You got to exercise some responsibility. I will tell you about changes I've made. If you don't believe me, then you got to look more closely. But that's my responsibility. These are the changes we made. This is different from last year. This is what we see. And then that budget comes back down and it's handed to us in the finance office. And all the finance office is doing, like Peter Taggart as the controller, he's just the guy in charge of the finances. He has all this power. I have no power, I've got a budget. I spend the money as I've been instructed to by the people I work for, The only power I have is stuff comes in. Is it in the budget or isn't it? That's the only question I ask. If it's not in the budget, that's, I'm sorry, I don't throw it out, but I set it down on my desk. We have to have some conversations about this. Where's this money going to come from? Why are we doing this? We didn't agree to do it. In some cases, if it's coming from Pastor Schaller, we have some extra money hidden, not hidden, but in certain places, contingency funds that we can spend, or maybe we can overspend. But that's all I do. Is it in the budget? Do we have the money? Write the check. If it's not in the budget, I can't approve it, And that's all we do in the finance office. So the point is that is the procedure for decision making, and the decisions have been made at the highest level by the people who are ultimately responsible for the church. Okay, that is our budget process. Okay, and it's important that you in our churches around the world have some sort of similar process, because what you do not want is the controller or the bookkeeper or, God forbid, the pastor's wife who writes checks. You do not want to put that person in a position or having the pressure of, they are bearing the responsibility of the whole church, okay? And that is a very unhealthy situation to be in. And that is why we have a budget. And that's why it's also very important for Greater Grace Church, for us to have not a balanced budget, but for a realistic budget. We don't want to be on the edge, okay? Suppose we ran out of money, and then we're making decisions about, oh, geez, what do I do here? Do I pay the electric bill, or do I meet the payroll, or what do I do? How am I going to do this thing here? Because then all of a sudden the bookkeeper is making decisions that are not even hers to make, or the controller. So what are we going to do? Start having elders meetings on a daily basis to decide how to pay these bills? Sometimes churches get into those situations, and God does it. I mean, if there's a income drops suddenly, or expenses rise, suddenly, unexpectedly, you can be in emergency situations. There needs to be good communication, but you don't want to live in that place because it is unhealthy. Okay? Some of us, not all of us, some of us are in families. Okay? We know what it's like to live hand to mouth. How do we make decisions? Here's my shut-off notices, okay? The first shut-off notice is going to be gas. I got to pay that. The next one is the electric. Next one is the phone bill. I'm going to pay them in that order. And yeah, families can live that way. You can live that way, but it will take a toll. And I know me as a husband and father, and just as a person, we lived that way for a season. It was from God, and we got ourselves out of it. I think it was God that got me out of it, but it's better not to be there if you don't have to be there. But if you're a young family and, you get unexpected children show up and stuff happens, but God brings us out of that, but you don't want to plan to live that way, And for a church to live that way, I think long-term is not wise, And then also, you're not paying your bills. As a church, you want to be not paying your bills. Is that where I want to be? I want to be a pastor driving down the street of a town somewhere, and there goes the oil truck. Oh, that's right. I owe that guy $1,000. I haven't paid it yet, and he gave me some oil yet. Do I want to be in that situation? Do I want that? Is that my reputation in the community? Do I want that to be my reputation? I read this book. It was one of these management books. The name of it is Swim with the Sharks. It was written, 20, 30 years ago by this guy, Harvey Mackay, Jewish guy, headquartered in Minneapolis, Minnesota, in the envelope business. One of his customers was the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association, okay? He said, everybody in town wants to do business with the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association because they pay their bills on time, or before we even send the invoice out, they have paid the bill. And Harvey Mackay writes in his book, that's why me, a Jewish businessman, that's why I send a donation every year to the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association, okay? So I'm just saying, don't think that somehow it's like God's will and we're glorifying God by living on the edge, like this is faith, and we can't pay these bills, and isn't this amazing? God's going to come through. If He puts you there, awesome. We're relaxed and we believe God and He comes through, and it's beautiful. But don't put yourself there, okay? Do not put yourself there. That's how I counsel couples. Do this stuff, and I believe in steps of faith, but quantify it. God, we're doing this. You have to give us an extra $500 miraculously, and we're trusting you for it, and jump off the cliff together. Believe God in specifics, but don't live in vague carelessness, thinking somehow God's going to cover it. Oh, we're going to send $500 to this missionary, and God's going to raise up the money for the oil bill. I don't know. Is that from God? I don't know. If the missionary is Daniel, yes, but I don't know anybody else. I don't know, I'm just saying, why not pay the oil man and trust God to raise up the money for the missionary? Why is that? How does that decision get made? Tell me about that one. I don't know. So, getting a little bit ornery here. So we've got a procedure. Now, here we go. So we've talked about the budget process. Now, what I want to talk about is a sort of a disclaimer for small churches, okay? We've talked about the Board of Elders, how that's going to go. Well, small churches, it might be a little bit different. We've talked about ordination. Well, for small churches, it might go a little bit differently, okay? And it's the exact same thing with finances, okay? You're out there on the mission field. You've got a team of 5 people and a church of 20 people. Okay, I got to get at least 3 people on my board of elders. I got to get 3 people on my board of trustees, and then I get someone to run my budget and run my finances. It's like, I just do not have these people, okay? And I agree with you. You don't have those people. You got to do the best you can. Now, we're going to talk about, I don't think I'm going to do cash handling, cash management, all that stuff. I don't think I'm going to get into that tonight. But what I am going to say is that you're out there on a small team. I want you to be aware of the principles that we're teaching. And if you have to do things temporarily because you simply don't have enough bodies to do a full-blown, greater grace thing, to run IBM, as you are doing things that you have to do to survive in the interim, keep in mind that it's temporary. Keep in mind the principles that you've been taught, and don't become comfortable with bad habits that continue with you as your church grows and as the potential for getting you in trouble. Okay? I'm a guy. I have an ego just like everybody else here. I can understand. It's kind of cool for the pastor to be like in charge. I'm saying, hey, write this check. Hey, we're going to pay this guy. We're going to do that type of... I understand how that goes. It's fun to be a CEO and to have your fingers on those buttons, But you're doing the best you can, but you want to be very careful, as I said, that you don't want to establish bad habits. And we're going to talk about good habits probably next class. But there's a few specific things that you want to avoid. And you want to avoid cash that has no accountability. Okay? And, once cash is gone, it can't be traced. The beautiful thing about a check is that it provides a paper trail. You want to be very careful with how you're handling cash. And you want to be very, very careful about the pastor and then pastor's wife, same thing. The nightmare scenario is the pastor's wife is the bookkeeper. You know what I'm saying? A situation where the pastor is the sole decision maker. Because even if that guy is, true blue, pure as gold, and I believe everybody here is, and I think our pastors are, the appearance will be that he is making decisions that is unwise. And then also along with that, think about this. Think about the pressure. Missionary pastor out there, small team. That guy has financial worries. He does. He doesn't have enough support. He went out there on a wing and a prayer, and he's, wondering, where his support's coming from. He's calling home base. His mother's, giving Christmas gifts to his kids because, all that type of stuff. And then the church has a little bit of money, and it's very, very difficult for that guy, and maybe some of you have been that guy. How am I going to make this decision? Am I making decisions in my best interest or in the best interest of the church? And then, wait a minute, I really am the church at this point. How can there be a day? If it's in my best interest, it's in the best interest of the church. And then you're like in that cycle. And then, listen, we all have that psychology. We all do. You know what I'm saying? We're men, and we all know it. So let's be honest about our weaknesses and set this thing up so our weaknesses do not become, ruling in a situation. So, what do we do? And I can suggest a few things. I'm not saying it's not waving a magic wand, but I can make a suggestion. And this is how I would suggest it, and this is really what we do with our, generally speaking, with some exceptions. But generally speaking, Greater Grace World Outreach is supporting missionaries, not missions. The money that we send out, most of it goes to people, not to organizations. So if you're going out there on the mission field, the way you want to think about it, and from God with no shame whatsoever, is you want to know that you and your family has to survive out there. You have to have enough money to eat, to keep rice or whatever you eat on the table, and survive, and not have your wife jumping ship or all that type of stuff. And it is good and honorable and right that you would have support coming to you. So when and we're here to help you. As home base, that's one of the services we provide. We provide sort of, people give us money, we give them the tax receipt, we send you the money. That's what we do here, okay? That's what our missions department does. So money comes into us for your personal support. And you get that money. What do you do with that money? Buy food for your family. It's clear what it's for. We're clear what it's for. You're clear what it's for. And there's zero shame, guilt, or even decision about that money. Now, if you pressurize yourself and say, you know what, we really need to rent a building. I'm going to take some of this money and rent a building. In a sense, that's on you. You know what I'm saying? It's your support. You choose to give it away to your organization that you're starting. Praise God. But, when you call us back and tell us you're starving to death, well, what are you doing with that money? There's no problem there. That transaction works, it's clear, and there's no problem, okay? The transaction that is difficult is when people are giving money to the church, okay? You've got a Bible study, you've got a Sunday morning service, you're out in Ecuador somewhere or whatever, and you're taking an offering in the church. That money is the problem and the difficulty, okay? When you're, I don't know if the word is tempted, but when you need that money to support yourself, at that point, you're an employee of the church, and someone's got to step in and manage that operation there, okay? You cannot be the guy making those decisions, okay? And that's, this is like the difficulties of a startup, and that's why you have to be very, very careful, You're doing a Bible study somewhere in someone's home, and they give you apple pie and coffee, and, hey, Pastor, here's $5 to buy you some gas. Oh, thank you so much for that. That's like awesome. It's no one cares about that. But then you start taking an offering, and that's that sweet little old lady. Oh, Pastor, this is great. I can tithe now. I start putting money into the offering. It's like, whoa, okay, now she's giving to the church, not to you, and that's when it has. It gets. That's when we have to be careful about that. Okay, so once the church is starting to take offerings, okay, that in my mind is like a dividing line. Now, this is Peter Taggart speaking. I'm not saying Greater Grace World Outreach would recommend this. There might be different spectrums here. My personal advice would be, until you are ready to properly receive for, record, deposit, and account for these funds, until you're ready to do that as a local assembly, you don't want to do that, okay? Now, home base, also, in addition to handling funds for individual missionaries, we also handle funds for startup churches. At least in this country we do. We really haven't done it overseas. The question's never been asked. But, you go plant a church in Virginia, and Pastor Taggart, we're starting to take offerings. Can you help us with this? Absolutely, we can help you with that. You send the money to us. Those people will get a tax-deductible receipt from Greater Grace World Outreach. And, Pastor, tell me the guy in your church who I will be talking to about this account other than you, okay? Because Peter Taggart will not be taking orders from you on this account. I'm not going to do that, okay? And you've got to tell me who in your church you're trusting to tell me how these disbursements are going to go, And we're going to get the money. You've signed contracts, you've rented a building. Well, send us that contract. We'll sign it, and we will send that person the money. We will pay them directly, You need money for, you want to buy a PA system, have someone in your church go buy it, and then send us the receipt, and we'll reimburse that person, okay? But it's not going to be the guy that's talking to me about this account. It's got to be somebody else. I'm not going to have a guy approving his own payment. So that's when we start to bring in that accountability and start to provide some sort of a covering, because we got a full-blown finance office here. This is what we do every day. We do it in our sleep. It's easy. We do it out of habit, and we will cover you in the months that you need as your church gets up and going. Now, if you don't grow, okay, we'll keep doing it. But if the church goes and we don't have an exact cutoff, but okay, you got $1,000 a month coming in, you got $2,000 a month coming in, guess what? You're big boys and girls now. It's time to if you get this much money coming in, you must have the people there. We got to start establishing. It's time for you guys to create your own organization there. It's time for you to incorporate and be able to handle these funds. But by the way, I'd recommend that you probably have some of us be on your board of elders. But in terms of your organization there, who are the men you trust in your church who have been doing it anyway, and you start to set up that apparatus so that you can handle this money accurately. Okay, that my recommendation would be don't start taking collections until you can do it, until you can get the money to us, and we'll talk about how to take collections properly. Now, other people, Pastor Taggart, what are you talking about? I'm working 2 jobs. I'm driving to this place, 100 miles each way to go do a Bible study there. I need this money for gas. People are handing me money. I'm taking it. Okay. I would say, I don't know. And I've been in that situation also, and I just report that up to the Board of Elders, and they do what they want with it, And we'll talk about this. But we had this situation in the last 24 months, maybe last 12 months, where a check shows up, and it's signed by one guy who happens to be pastoring a church. And it's like, whoa, okay, so that was a phone call to Pastor Hadley, and they, at that point, it's off of me. They can handle their affiliate churches out there. Okay, so the pastor wants to keep himself out of that situation. It avoids all appearance of evil. It takes away a means by which the devil can destroy his ministry. And it keeps him from starting bad habits in his early days that will continue with him and benefit him all the days of his ministry. Okay? And, ditto with the pastor's wife, And, that was what I heard one time. Well, we live in a place that's really spread out. It takes, we're in a rural area. People are all over the place. I really have to keep the checkbook in my home. I don't agree with it. You do what you want to do. You're a self-governing church, but I don't. You're never going to get to tell you it's okay to do that. I'm not going to do that. Okay, so from this class, I want you to know, the overview of finances. We got to establish procedures for ensuring that church funds are used for the purposes of the church and happen in a way so that the church maintains a testimony. We do it with a defined procedure for decision-making, which we talked about, which is a budget, and establishing a procedure for conduct of business, and especially the collection and disbursements of funds. We'll talk about that next class. And then we talked about, small churches. We talked about some options, some problems and options for small churches. And then we talked about the pitfalls of, cash in particular, cash being handed around, you can't trace it, and it looks terrible. And then the pastor putting himself or his wife of being in a position of being like the sole decision maker in a church. We want to get away from that as soon as we possibly can. Certainly he has influence, but he's got to be covered. He has to be smart enough to know that he has to get himself covered, and he does that with other people. Okay? All that he's hearing from God is not going to overcome the bad things that can happen with appearance, if nothing else. Okay? So it's 10 minutes till 9. I'm at a stopping point. I'm going to stop unless you have any questions. Questions tend to dwindle after 8:30. I'm sorry, yes? Go right ahead, sir. Oh, send the microphone. I'm with you. I'm just having fun. I know you guys work hard and are tired.
Is there any situation where Greater Grace has made donations to an organization?
Sure.
Can you care to expound for like 2 minutes?
Yeah. Well, there's, we've, pardon?
Children of Grace?
I don't think we've ever made a donation to Children of Grace that I'm aware of. There are churches that have come to us and said, hey, gee, we really need help with this project. We think if we were able to rent a location for X number of months, it would be awesome. If you guys can kick in, X number of dollars, hundreds or whatever, we could rent a place. We could establish a location. We think it'll really make the Bible study grow. We've done that, And the point I was really making is not that we don't help organizations, it's just that we do help individuals. If you're out there on the field, let's have support for you, and let's call it what it is, and we all know what it is, and you spend it on whatever you want to spend it on, and that money is very easy to handle, you know? As long as you don't have a lavish lifestyle, which we never give enough money for that to happen. We tend to give it out in dribs and drabs, and our missionaries raise the bulk of their own support, and then we kick in a little bit here and there.
What about tithing to Baltimore?
Yeah, just send that.
You know, is that something that you encourage?
Local churches to
I
tithe.
think you may have missed a class or two ago, didn't you? I think you were absent. Because I know I mentioned this, but I'll bring it up again because you're asking. Yeah, I would say that there was a time when a lot of affiliate ministries would tithe to Baltimore. And that has dwindled. And I can only think of 2 churches that give to Baltimore. I have them in my head. I'm not going to name them because it's, in a sense, maybe it's not our business. But I have an opinion on it that, and I think it's consistent with our practice, is that just our relationship with our affiliates, as I said last class, it's not a financial transaction. We're not a denomination. If affiliates are sending us money, we definitely cash the checks. Thank you very much. Thank you for that. But if an affiliate were to stop doing it, there would not be a phone call asking them what happened, you know. And I mean, I understand there's like a tithe, maybe principle in the Bible, but as far as one church tithing to another church, I mean, the only thing I see in the book of Acts is you had a needy church in Jerusalem because of persecution, and churches were giving willingly and graciously to meet the needs. But yeah, we don't teach it, don't preach it, don't encourage it, but we take the gifts when they come. But I just don't think you'll ever, unless you ask the question, I just don't think you'll ever hear about it from us, you know. And if I were out there as an affiliate ministry, I don't know if I'd be motivated. You know, people are giving, they're giving to this local assembly, they're tithing. I think, in terms of our benefit from affiliates, you guys, I mean, where'd you guys come from, you know? You were sent here by our affiliates, you know, and sometimes you go back, lots of times people stay, you know? So that's a great benefit we get that is awesome. Our affiliates do help us with radio a lot, and then our affiliates, there's a ton of missionary support. You know, maybe some of you have personal experience with that our churches are heavy missionary givers, you know, so they really, very important part of the picture there. But I know I'm totally happy with us freely giving, you know, and we're doing what we do just to minister and no money coming to us as a result. Okay, so God bless us as we go. I hope that you're not doing nothing between now and next Monday night. I would want you, I don't like the word memorizing, but that's part of it, but meditating and really becoming familiar with this material. I want you to own it and you to understand it and be able to give it back from your heart, not just writing down quotes you've heard from Pastor Taggart, and then those of you that are doing this makeup paper, I would do it. And I think I said in the email, but collaborate. I want you to write your own paper, but if you get ideas from somebody else, none of these ideas are original. I mean, I'm not trying to get you to come up with something new. I just want you to understand what we're teaching. Okay, thanks everybody.